Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. So today the adventure for JB Friends and RV is to go help a friend of mine, part of the JB crew, with a skylight installation to his RV. He noticed a water leak during the rainy season in Southern California, and through some troubleshooting discovered that the skylight needed to be replaced. We'll be working together and you'll have it on film. Thanks. You guys can tell we're here to make the repair that I mentioned, and my friend wanted to make sure we had good footage, so he set up this very professional area for me to record with tie downs on the back of his truck. And we'll go ahead and have 911 ready on the speed dial because I'll be up there recording and assisting. Wish me luck. This is what the cover looks like. And the symptoms is we were getting water running inside, and we were getting water on the shower. So as we remove this, now we can see and inspect. So we're trying to see if we could tell where the water was coming in from. And lo and behold, you will notice a little crack right there. And that's where the water was coming in, through here, into the shower. With the cover, inside cover on, there's no way you could have seen it. The inspection had been done out on top, and now there's your crack. And as they say, crack kills. So we'll fix that today. This is a picture of the current condition of the skylight. You'll notice some new diacore, and the reason the diacore is there is because he had just replaced it, hoping it was that. That is me on top of that ladder. Safety first, but just holding on for dear life. At the edge of the putty knife, you will notice the crack. Remove this junk. Then expose the screws. The screws. Yeah, the goal here is to expose the screws. You'll notice in some previous pictures that we already had that crack is really hard to find. Initially, my friend here had put additional lap sealant, thinking it was a sealing issue, and it didn't stop the leak, and from further troubleshooting discovered that the skylight needs to be replaced.
And it looks like whoever put this in before tightened the screws too much, and this one's cracked right here.
Okay, so that is another heads up and another tip from JB Friends and RV. You do not over tighten them. You tighten them to the point of where you see it flex a little, and that's it. You don't need to tighten it any further because it'll lead to issues like cracks, and we're discovering cracks as we're taking this apart, and it's a good lesson learned.
Ready?
So now the next step, once you've uncovered all of the screws, is to remove the screws. Now, we're going to save the screws,
Yes.
just in case they're needed. Make sure you put them aside. So you'll notice we're removing one screw at a time. And by we, I mean Mike over here is removing all the screws, one at a time. This next step is why the spatula will come in handy. You're going to get it to separate, and as you saw that, it started to deteriorate. Okay, so the putty knife, I called it a spatula. The putty knife is to get between the sealant and the old skylight and to get the seal removed, and that way you can lift up the old skylight. Okay, you see, be real careful not to damage the actual rubber roof. Just basically breaking up the old seal that it had. You see? The first move he did, and it cracked a huge piece off. The sun deteriorates these things, and you know, Oh, that's good footage of how you're going to get in there, and you're going to get it to basically unseal, and then we'll be able to lift the actual skylight off. Ready, sir? And this is how it comes up. Okay, that's the old skylight. We'll get a closer look at it later, and we're going to give you some tips on how to make your life easier.
See, I screwed it. I messed this up right here a little bit.
And this is what you got to be careful about. Okay, we were hitting it with the putty knife, and it could cause a little bit of damage. So we're going to make sure that when we clean this all off and inspect it, if any additional sealant is needed there, then that'll be applied. Okay, but this is what it looks like from the outside. Okay, and here's the old skylight, and again we're going to show you a huge trick in a moment. There's the additional equipment from JP Friends in RV, thanks to Nick. Got that GoPro there for a little side view, and Mike's still here hard at work trying to get this all nice and cleaned up. Do not stand or sit. I'm making sure not to do that.
I'm trying to get it so it's kind of level.
Yeah.
So that the thing lays flat and be more likely to seal.
Well, the self-sealing lappet, self-leveling.
That should help.
Yes, because it'll find the nook and cranny.
Yeah.
So the step that you see us doing here is removing what appears to be plumber's putty. So in addition to the Diacore or self-leveling sealant, see the darker that Mike's removing, the darker it appears to be like plumber's putty, which is interesting. We haven't found that on any of the documentation and paperwork, but it might be a little trick that this manufacturer, Coachman, this one is a Chaparral Light by Coachman. And the light might mean they went light on the Diacore and heavy on the plumber's putty. Okay, so one of the ideas that we have here, and we'll see how it works, is to lay down the new one and then lay the old one right over it. And that way we're going to be able to use the exact same holes. This will only work if they're exact replicas of each other, and these are, so it lines up perfectly. In addition to that, to make sure that we have it set up the same way, we're going to mark where the crack was. Okay, so we're marking the edge, and we know that that's that side, and we're going to lay it down the exact same way. And so now we're going to pre-drill these holes here to match them up before we go onto the roof, making life a little bit easier. So right now we're going through different drill bits to make sure they match with the hole. You do not want to make the holes any bigger than they need to be. It looks like we found the right one. And we're going to go ahead and use a drill gun that was probably used by George Washington. I almost said George W., but the original George W., George Washington.
That stuff is hard.
So that screw there in place is to hold it in place so it doesn't shift as we're putting in the new holes, okay?
Should hurry. So I don't drill holes in my
Workbench. And again, we're putting in screws so this thing doesn't move and shift on us, and we can make sure all of the holes are aligned. These are all the pilot holes already drilled through. Okay, they do sell some of these that have the holes already. The issue with that is you might obviously not be able to match them up. You'll notice the previous install had an interesting, this hole's here, this hole's here. The hole pattern is just, maybe the Bud Light they were consuming while they were installing affected the intervals, the distance. But we just matched it up and wish us luck. The installation will happen in a moment. So we're using some purple power to, it's a degreaser cleaner, just to get rid of some of the leftover, looks like putty and some sealant, just to also remove any debris, any dirt, and we can have some really good adhesion to the diet core that we'll be applying, that's in that blue tube there. We're gonna eat some chicken that Lupe made, it sounds like, with some beans, and wash it down with some brewskis. The moment of truth, we're lining it up, and what does it look like, Mike?
Good.
Looks good.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, so I should take the... Boy, it takes a lot to get this stuff going.
So this next step is to add lap sealant. He's gonna go from hole to hole, making a little bead. And looks like Mike should have had his Wheaties this morning. He's having a couple issues getting it out of there.
We're talking about the...
We're talking about the self-leveling diet core. Don't misunderstand. He's having sealant erectile dysfunction for some reason.
It won't come out.
Hopefully that doesn't mean we're running out of
No.
sealant.
It's just that the end is all dried.
So it has a little channel to go out through. So another good little reminder, you know, you might have to cut it back a little to make the opening bigger. It's an option because it just seems like it's a little too much of a challenge.
Yeah, it wasn't this hard before.
That's what she said. Hell. That'll be in the outtakes, and it will be on the cutting floor. Now it's coming out like it's supposed to. So now Mike is installing each screw one by one.
Did I make sure I had it right?
And
Where's the black mark?
we're looking for the black mark because that'll tell
I
us
put it in the wrong spot.
that we put it in the wrong spot. And again, these are the little things that lessons learned, and better to figure that out after one screw only instead of, how many screws total we got, Mike?
24.
24 screws. So we'll do a correction and get it lined up perfectly, because some of these holes must be used that way because the previous installers decided to go, like I mentioned earlier, the Budweiser method of hole installation, and they didn't follow any rhyme or reason. They just made holes. And so instead of putting a whole new set of 24 holes, the decision here was made to use the existing holes and just line it up, and no harm, no foul. And we're getting it corrected now. So, low crack.
I don't know, but it didn't cinch down.
So that's the wood. So just keep going with them. It could be that hole. Remember how we talked some were bigger holes? So a lot of double checking, and he's gonna use the hand screwdriver instead of a drill, trying to prevent the possibility of cracking the new Skylight. So things to think about, things to consider, and if we use any foul language, then please excuse us. So special care should be taken. We already have one of the holes that has caused a little bit of a crack. So as a preventative measure, we're drilling out the holes a little bit bigger, so they're not biting on the actual Skylight as we bring them in. They're just there to tighten.
I think maybe the hole was cracked when I drilled it.
Gotcha.
That I pushed too hard. Maybe I should check to see how the screws fit now.
And then for where that is, some diet core, you know. Important step that we want to make sure we discuss is adding a bead at the edge of the Skylight. Afterwards, going over every screw opening and entrance to have more diet core. This is where you're not going to get greedy with your diet core with the self-leveling sealant, because it's self-leveling, so it's going to find every little nook and cranny, every little hole. It'll get in there and give you a good seal. You see here Mike applying it in globs. Again, he's going to go over the screws as well. But this job is pretty much coming to completion. It is looking really good. We have no major concerns. He lined it up, and the job is more
I should have started on the far side.
it has more steps than we would have imagined. And this video was to give you a really good idea of how labor intensive this job truly is. But it's very necessary if you have water coming into your rig because you have a cracked Skylight. So this was a successful job. Please notice that there's sealant at the edge and over every screw hole. As a reminder, please like and don't forget to subscribe. JB Friends and RV. See you at the next adventure.